For USCFootball.com, I'm Jack Smith, joined alongside Chris Trevino for instant analysis from USC's 14th and final spring practice. Chris, what were some of your overall general thoughts from the last spring practice before USC goes into the spring game on Saturday?
Well, for one, welcome back, Jack. He's been gone for what feels like 3 weeks, but he made his return for the final spring practice. I'm a little bummed because, weather report-wise, it's been a very overcast day. There was a little bit of sprinkle, so wasn't the best of weather to end spring camp with, but hopefully that yields itself to great weather over the weekend for the spring game. But there were some famous faces out there. One, Jake Olson, the former USC long snapper and inspirational figure that he is, with his dog Quebec. They were at practice. And Jalen Hurts, Eagles quarterback Jalen Hurts, former Heisman finalist and former Oklahoma, Alabama, I don't know how you want to call it, but he was at practice today, all swagged out, like he was, wearing sunglasses, even though, there's no sun out. That's just how cool he is. But he was out there, talked to Lincoln after practice. So some of the stars were out for USC practice, but, they wrapped it up. Final one. We're here at the end. It's time to cap off spring practice with a spring game on Saturday.
Oh, and it felt like we were in practice for a little longer than normal. We got to see some extended tackling drills. We got to see the offense working a little bit down on the farther field. Kind of feels like they were like, let's throw them a bone. Got a couple extra minutes because this is the last spring practice, so we'll see the spring game, and then we won't see the team practice again until the fall.
Well, I do have to say they already gave us that bone earlier in the week. You weren't here, but Monday they let us watch the entire thing. You watched that instant analysis with Brian and RJ talking about that. So maybe a little bit more time, but for the most part, it was consistent with what we've seen for the most part. A lot of tackling, though. They've really been emphasizing tackling this week. We feel like they do that every week, but it felt like a little bit more for this week, knowing that they're going to be tackling, each other on Saturday in front of fans in the Coliseum.
Well, I think that leads us into the theme of the day, which was it's another defense day. Being here on a Thursday, we get to talk with defensive players and coaches. And we got two coaches today. We got inside linebackers coach Brian Odom, as well as defensive backs coach Donte Williams. I know you talked with Donte. What were some of your general thoughts from what he said?
Yeah, it was just kind of a solo interview first because everyone is over with Brian Odom, probably asking about freshman Tackett Curtis, the legend that is him. We'll get into that. But, Donte fielded a bunch of different questions, asked him what he thought about his position group after their Saturday scrimmage on the Coliseum. And he talked about, he felt like the playmaking has been there all spring camp. They're getting interceptions, they're making those plays, those pass breakups. But he felt like, from a technical standpoint, he felt like they took a step back in Saturday's scrimmage. So that's something they're trying to work forward this week and try to showcase in the spring game this week. You're making plays and stuff, but don't lose your technique. Don't lose all that stuff, because that's when you start making bad plays and things getting busted coverage and all that. So really going to put emphasis on technique going into this week and see if they can combine both of those things with Saturday's spring game. They're also a very healthy unit. Last year there were a lot of injuries for that defensive back room, but they are much deeper this year. And they had a couple injuries throughout the most of camp, but for the most part, they've had enough bodies to compete, and they've really gotten a lot of guys back for the end of the spring game. Jacoby Covington, Christian Roland-Wallace, Fabian Ross were some guys that have been banged up, but they're back and they're ready to go for the spring game. So a much deeper unit than they were last spring. Domani Jackson obviously is another one who didn't practice last spring. This spring, he's been doing a lot of work. Donte was really big on him, getting on the field, staying on the field, and getting those reps, which he did not get last year, did not get as a senior year. So that's the big thing with Domani, just staying healthy, staying on the field, and getting some reps, live bullets. And, I think a lot of people are excited to see him in the spring game.
Yeah, I got to talk to another redshirt freshman corner, and Fabian Ross, and I know that Coach Williams made some talking about him as well. What did you overall gain from talking with Fabian as well and hearing some comments from Donte Williams?
Yeah, a lot of people forget about, Fabian Ross. He was that other cornerback signee in that class with Domani Jackson, but Fabian's been really solid. Donte Williams said, he took a couple lumps early in spring. He had some injury issues, but he has finished really strong. And he said this practice, Thursday practice, he felt like his best practice that he's had all camp. So he ended on a really high note, trying to put it like an even higher note for Saturday for the spring game. But, Fabian, kind of working at that nickel, seemed like early in his career, has moved back to corner, which is more natural position. He's a little bit bigger, stronger. He says he really appreciated, that time to just develop as a redshirt freshman last season. So, he's someone, it's a very stacked veteran room, but, Fabian Ross is a guy I've told you guys keep an eye on. This is a guy come from a big powerhouse program, Bishop Gorman, with the Branch brothers. So he knows how to play at a high level, and I think he's a guy who can, steal some minutes down the line and be a contributor this season.
And to kind of wrap up the defensive back talk, I know that there were a lot of words said about Ceyair. Wright, what did you gain from that?
Right, Ceyair has been a guy that Lincoln Riley has, praised a lot this season as being someone who has taken that step forward, and Donte Williams had the same thing. The thing about Ceyair Wright is you're seeing the plays being made. You're seeing that playmaking ability, getting those interceptions, getting those deflections, getting those pass breakups, all those things you want out of your cornerback. And he said, we need that. You're losing a guy like Mekhi Blackman off to the NFL, their number one corner, who could step up and take on an offense's number one weapon. They need a guy like that. And Ceyair Wright, pushing to be that guy for this season. He said, you're seeing the playmaking, you're seeing the confidence, which is something Lincoln Riley has talked about, but you're also seeing him have fun out there. And that's, it's football, it's a game. You're having fun, and you're playing so much more looser and having a lot more fun out there when you can be loose like that. So you're seeing the fun come out, you're seeing the smile come out, and you're seeing, he said, he was a guy who wasn't a mid-year enrollee when he came in. So this is actually his, just his second year. So unlike some of the other early enrollee guys, but you're seeing the growth, you're seeing the confidence, and you're seeing, that playful nature come out with Ceyair Wright.
I got to talk with inside linebacker coach Brian Odom, and the first person he was asked about, I bet you can guess, it was the freshman Tackett Curtis, and he had a lot of great things to say. He just said, there aren't really many bad days for Tackett out on the football field, and even the bad days that he does have, they're not that bad. He's really almost always at, the highest peak level performance that he can be at, and it's really impressive seeing all the things that they saw in the recruiting process translating over to his first spring, saying, he really closes on the ball quickly, he's got a lot of speed, he has really just a knack to go after the ball and the ball carrier. So they've really been impressed with what they've seen from Tackett Curtis so far. I know you listened back to the interview. Overall, what did you gain from hearing what Odom had to say about Tackett?
Right. I mean, Tackett is just a fan favorite among so many people, and the legend of Tackett Curtis continues to grow and grow and grow and grow, and I'm afraid of how big it's going to grow, but everyone really excited to see number 25 out on Saturday in the Coliseum, see what he can do. And yeah, he said he doesn't have many bad days, and his consistency level is so high. He's not a big talker. He just goes down, puts his head in, does his work. And obviously Odom was asked about, it's a very stacked room with that room. You have Mason Cobb, you have Shane Lee, you have Eric Gentry, who's, rehabbing from that ankle injury or that ankle surgery from this offseason. So that's 3 starters right there. And Tackett Curtis, just a freshman, highly anticipated freshman, but still a freshman nonetheless. But, Brian Odom said if he keeps doing the things that he's doing, playing fearless, playing fast, playing hard, being physical, he's going to find his way onto the field. And he's pretty sure of that, but he just has to keep doing what he's been doing, being a hard worker, staying consistent. So I'm pretty sure we're going to see a little bit of 25 this season, starting with the spring game on Saturday.
A couple other players that Odom talked about were Mason Cobb, the transfer linebacker from Oklahoma State, as well as Eric Gentry, a guy who USC fans should not forget about, a guy that has been injured all spring, hasn't been able to participate in the white lines, as Odom put it, but he's still making an impact. Specifically for Gentry, Odom mentioned that he's really active in the meeting rooms, as I think we would all expect seeing Eric Gentry's leadership last year, and he's always on the sidelines. In fact, we asked Shane Lee about it, and he said that he saw a clip from practice where it was a one-on-one that he was doing on the field, and he saw just in the background of that video, it's Eric Gentry mimicking all the moves that he would be doing if he wasn't injured. Said he clipped it, sent it to Eric Gentry, and said, thank you for your enthusiasm. We really appreciate you still, being out here, being present with us despite your injury. And I think that's the kind of guy that Odom was mentioning, that USC is going to get back in Eric Gentry, and he's really excited to see what Eric Gentry will look like, A, in his second year on the offense, and B, just in his second year as an inside linebacker in general. So Eric Gentry still making an impact on USC spring ball despite the injury. And Mason Cobb, Coach Brian Odom said that he was born and built to be an inside linebacker, just really prototypical, does a lot of things right. And so it seems like Coach Brian Odom really impressed with the inside linebacker room so far. From whether it's Cobb or Gentry, what was your main takeaway?
Yeah, I mean, just think about where the linebacker room was last spring. They were depleted on bodies. They didn't have Eric Gentry. They didn't have a high-priced freshman like a Tackett Curtis. They were just trying to figure out what this group was going to look like. Now, year forward, he's got a really good group, and, Lincoln Riley called that one of the deepest position groups on this team for next season, which is a complete 180. And yeah, don't forget, you have Eric Gentry coming back for fall and summer, and that's a stacked room with Tackett Curtis, with Shane Lee, who's a team captain, and Mason Cobb, who was one of my standout performers for that Monday practice. He was just everywhere around the ball. I mean, one of the knocks about Mason Cobb coming out of Oklahoma State is that sometimes he was out of position, but you can fix that. You can, if you playing hard and you're going after the ball and you're attacking, you're relentless, and you get after it like a prototypical middle linebacker like he is, you're going to win some ball games. You're going to make some plays. So that's what I saw a glimpse of that on Monday when he was everywhere. Again, not full pads. They were just in spiders. They were just like, just throwing plays, no running, stuff like that. So we'll get a better sense of that on Saturday. But Mason Cobb has had a really, really strong spring, and we've seen him move up the depth chart and kind of play alongside Shane Lee. Started on the second team with Tackett early in the camp. Now he's kind of moving into that first team. So we'll see that competition push and evolve moving into summer and fall.
Well, that's all we have for spring practice. Chris, we've mentioned the spring games on Saturday for fans that are attending, or maybe for fans that aren't and still need a reason to attend. What is the one or two things that you think fans should look out for when they go to the spring game on Saturday?
Well, I asked Max Williams, the safety, who got gold plated today. He talked about, I asked him straight up, I was like, hey, Max, you guys, were able to get fans to come out last season despite, just winning 4 games the year prior. You set a record for attendance. I was like, do you have any message for the fans? He was like, come out, let's set the new record. So they want fans out there. You got a returning Heisman winner coming back. You have some new shiny weapons on offense. You got a Dorian Singer. You got a number 1 ranked wide receiver in Zach Branch. You got Tackett Curtis on the defensive side of the ball. You have some big new weapons on defense. There's a lot to be excited about, and it's going to be gorgeous weather. Help them set that record. I think we're going to get a big response from the fans coming out. I don't think it's going to be as blistering hot as it was last time. So I think there are a lot of reasons why you want to come out to the spring game. Caleb Williams, get a chance to see a Heisman winner in the Coliseum once again, because this might be your last year to see him play here in the Coliseum, that wear that number 13. So get the season started off right, and I think you got to come out to the spring game. We'll be there. We'll do an instant. I'll be on the field. Jack will be in the booth somewhere. So I think there's a lot of reasons to come out for the spring game.
Well, and it's the last time if you want an opportunity to see USC play before the fall, and we're not going to have any more practices. It's kind of the last real big chance for USC football content over the spring. So you got to make sure to go out to the Coliseum and check it out. And you mentioned the Heisman Trophy. Caleb Williams is going to be getting his Heisman Trophy during halftime of the spring game, so just another reason to come out and see USC just continue to rack up the Heisman and see Caleb Williams get presented with his trophy. But anyways, that's all we've got for you today. Make sure to go check out the interviews on the website. You can check all the articles that are posted as well, and be ready for instant analysis from the spring game. But for Chris Trevino, I'm Jack Smith. Check out uscfootball.com for more.